Welcome to ISAP, International Forum for Sustainable Asia and the Pacific 2020, organized by the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. We will start thematic track 5 on collaborative learning and co-creation of sustainable living. The session will be 90 minutes long, and I hope you enjoy watching our discussions. ISAP 2020 is using Slido to interact with the audience. You can ask questions and make comments in the sessions via Slido on the session webpage or by accessing to the Slido URL or the QR code with your smartphone, PC, or tablet. Again, welcome to the ISAP 2020 session 5 on collaborative learning and co-creation of sustainable living. IJUST, supported by the Ministry of the Environment Japan, the government Sweden, and together with the Stockholm Environment Institute, has coordinated the Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program of the UN-led One Planet Network. We have collaborated with many stakeholders globally to enable and promote sustainable ways of living. We have launched more than 20 unique initiatives, including the ground-level innovations for empowering cities, communities, schools, and workplaces to develop sustainable and reliable ways of living. We have obtained valuable lessons from our collaboration with these initiatives and summarized them in a recently published report, Co-Creating Sustainable Ways of Living, which is available from the session website. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has posed severe challenges to the efforts to enable sustainable living on the ground. Above all, the restrictive measures taken by the governments made it almost impossible for the ground-level activities to continue collective actions and collective learning, which are the cores for sustainable living. That said, our partners have put tremendous efforts to respond to the crisis and crafted a broad range of creative means to recover the learning opportunities. So this session aims to highlight the experiences of our partners from 5 countries: Armenia, Colombia, South Africa, Brazil, and the Philippines. Their key insights help us reconsider our efforts towards sustainable living and sustainable societies. First of all, I would like to have an opening remark from Mr. Naoki Amako, the Deputy Director for the International Strategy Division, the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. Mr. Amako, the floor is yours.
Your mic may be muted.
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Amako is disconnected, so we will have his remarks later on. And I would like to now introduce Dr. Robert Dirham from the Inland Norway University of Applied Science. He will introduce the latest discussion and approaches for education for sustainable living. Robert, please unmute yourself. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Watabe-san, and thank you to IGS for hosting this important event. Just bring up my presentation. Hello, I am Robert Didem, and I would like to talk about the roles quality education and collaborative learning play in supporting the implementation of sustainable development and the attentiveness it provides towards individuals' daily life choices and their impacts on sustainability. The Global Education Monitoring Report in 2015 noted that education will be the linchpin of a sustainable development agenda whose success relies on individuals throughout their lifetime acquiring relevant knowledge and developing positive attitudes to address global challenges. While education is identified as a standalone goal of the Sustainable Development Goals in SDG 4, it is also recognized as a means of implementation for supporting the achievement of all SDGs. Seen here, the 5 Ps of the Sustainable Development Agenda capture the major themes of the SDGs in terms of planet, people, prosperity, or the traditional environmental, social, and economic dimensions of sustainable development, as well as peace and partnership as the basic foundations for securing global sustainable development. But what if we apply the same 5 Ps to how we frame and consider ESD, Education for Sustainable Development? What then might the goals be? For planet, this means developing students' critical awareness and reflexivity to create personal knowledge constructs. For prosperity, or for people, for planet, it means education that promotes holistic, integrated interpretations of knowledge and whole systems thinking. For people, it means developing students' critical awareness and reflexivity to create personal knowledge constructs. For prosperity, this means learning that is oriented towards problem solving, practical experience, and the search for new knowledge and innovations. For peace, it is about empowering socially aware and responsible citizens who appreciate interdependent relationships between themselves, society, and ecosystems. And for partnership, it is about developing cooperative learning relationships through deliberation, democratic dialogue, group meaning making, and social learning. These 5 aspects may be understood as the main lifelong learning skills promoted by ESD. The importance of education as a development goal is well documented. Education is recognized as having one of the highest long-term returns on investment of all development goals, and it can lead to improved health, disease prevention, reduced child mortality, improved equity and equality, strengthened civic participation and engagement in decision-making processes, increased earning potential for the individual, and increased national GDP. It is important to note, though, that recent studies have now demonstrated that quality education outcomes are a better predictor of economic growth rates than average school enrollment. And there is also a stronger correlation with greater increases in these growth rates. There are now increasing calls for ESD to be applied as an effective model for advancing quality education. And as such, quality education for sustainable development is about what people learn, its relevance to today's world and global challenges, and how learners develop the skills and attitudes to respond to such challenges and prosper now and for future generations. The objectives for achieving quality education can be explained as follows. First, it is about the application of a well-developed curriculum, or what people learn. Second, it is about improving the quality of teaching and learning methodologies through improvement and expansion of teacher training to yield ESD competent teachers, or how people learn. Third, it is about the establishment of safe and effective learning environments, or where and with whom people learn. Fourth, it is about inspiring transformative and cooperative approaches to teaching and learning, or in what context people learn. If If we consider the relationship between quality education and education for sustainable development, ESD, then we can respond to these 4 points in the following manner. What people learn is related to the sustainability competencies, or the relevant knowledge, skills, and values. How people learn is related to the use of progressive pedagogies to support active, experiential learning and to frame the entire teaching process in such an active and experience-based way, or student-centered way. Where and with whom people learn is about the development of cooperative learning relationships to support collective problem solving and meaning making. And in what context people learn is about the actual framework of understanding and worldview that the education system supports. And for ESD, this is about supporting an integrative and pluralistic system, not just for knowledge transmission, but also for new knowledge generation. At the heart of learning for sustainable development is the need to engender a society where people can work together to reimagine and search for new solutions and innovations for the way that we structure our communities, our daily lives, and our personal relationships in ways that are more sustainable. These points are captured in the Sustainability Learning Performance Framework, and this provides a holistic model for considering educational reforms and improvements for achieving quality education for sustainable development. Education for sustainable development is underscored by some important meta-themes that guide its overall learning perspective. It is concerned with whole systems thinking and the development of holistic understandings and interpretation. It promotes a progression from individual to interconnected and examines the interdependence of parts of the whole. It also works to move from a learning environment based on competition to one based on cooperation, and encourages working together to find new solutions. ESD additionally aims to increase the emotional abilities of learners and develop their skills for critical analysis and reflection. Ultimately, we can see ESD is focused on creating connections and building relationships. Through this process of building connections and relationships, a key goal of ESD is to make education relevant to the whole person and to the real world. This recognizes the need to strengthen the connections between education and real life. As such, it aims to enable learners with the skills for lifelong learning and for creating positive change in their society. It stresses the roles of critical thinking, problem solving, and higher order thinking skills. But to achieve this goal, it also challenges us to reconsider the learning approaches, methodologies, and pedagogies that we use. The relevance of education and learning to addressing real-world challenges is an important point of consideration in relation to sustainable development. When we dive into the issues addressed in sustainability, we find that many of the main concerns of sustainable development are not about the technological and scientific infrastructures, but relate very directly to how people live their daily lives and the effects that has on the environment and the wider society. To address these concerns, we must begin to establish ways for promoting sustainable living to the average individual. For sustainability to become connected to new ways of living, sustainable development must be relevant to individuals at a personal level. It is specifically this challenge to make sustainable development relevant to individuals at a personal level that Education for Sustainable Lifestyles targets. Education for Sustainable Lifestyles, or ESL, is a specialized subset of ESD that deals with learning which stimulates a transformation of both our inner life and external conditions, achieving a dynamic coherence between material and non-material requirements of life. ESL includes gaining as much insight as possible about both the short-term and long-term consequences of one's lifestyle's choices for oneself others, and the planet. ESL is an ongoing process of social learning in which groups together determine how to make their communities more sustainable. Establishing safe and effective and innovative learning environments is key to quality education and can be advanced through Education for Sustainable Development's integration of real-world, participatory, action-oriented, and holistic forms of education. With a focus on cooperation, engagement, and active experience in learning, effective learning environments can play an important role in the development of mutual trust and social bonds by supporting cooperative learning relationships, and thus also help to enhance students' emotional safety. These learning environments can strengthen linkages with the surrounding natural environment and provide dynamic opportunities for practice and problem solving with sustainable development. There are also real opportunities to further the bridge between formal and non-formal education and between in-class and real-world learning. For example, schools can become hubs for community learning, where local citizens can gather and participate in and contextualize learning opportunities to meet the real needs of their community. Drawing on the communities of practice theory by Wenger and applying this to case studies in community-based learning for sustainable development, we find 5 main conditions that facilitate an effective learning community. 1, belonging, which is framed by mutual engagement, reflexive exploration, and a coordinated alignment of group identity. 2, commonality, which reinforces the importance of a shared sense of purpose and common interest among a group of participants who engage in reflective practice. 3, situatedness, which draws on the concept of situated cognition and poses that learners obtain both implicit and explicit knowledge when learning is embedded in rich social context. 4, infrastructure, which considers the need to promote and facilitate participation and ensure accountability for the long-term continuation of communities of practice. And 5, interdependence, which is established when the various members of a group of learners bring unique skills and expertise, as well as differing demands to the group. Building local multi-stakeholder partnerships is another key way to help facilitate ESD learning communities. Participatory and collaborative learning partnerships create opportunities for reflexive and inclusive building of trust. And then this can lead to the development of solutions and innovations over a period of time. There are many opportunities for creating strong partnerships, including through engagement with universities, with businesses, and with media. But for community-based learning initiatives to be truly effective, engagement with the public or with local citizens is pertinent. In Japan, for example, it is the community learning centers that have been active in creating these initiatives, such as the Okayama-Koyama ESD environmental project, which led communities to actively help develop better living places, to learn to practically and cooperatively address relevant sustainability challenges, and to strengthen social relationships through these collective endeavors. When we work to facilitate and build cooperative learning relationships, there are several features that we should aim to ensure. Creating an inclusive structure for interaction, as well as a culture open to debate and deliberation. Providing means for the group to process, manage, and share information and new knowledge in a collective manner, as well as clear definition of individuals' roles within the group and mechanisms for active participation and power sharing, which help to create shared ownership and commonality. It is also important to support positive interdependence, which can be achieved when each individual is able to contribute something unique from their own skills and expertise to help achieve the collective endeavor. And it is valuable to ensure there are opportunities for reflexive moments and discourse within the group. Establishing these types of cooperative learning relationships provide many important benefits in education for sustainable development. Just to highlight a few, cooperative learning relationships can strengthen skills for public participation and collectively working through complex issues and challenges. It improves systems thinking as groups work with the dynamics of change and complex interactions. And it leads to strengthened accountability and role sharing. In closing, quality education for sustainable development can be achieved by equally harnessing progressive pedagogies and cooperative learning approaches to create student-centered learning, critical reflection, and problem solving. For this to be possible, though, several improvements are needed. Teachers must be equipped with appropriate pedagogical skills and methods through both pre-service and in-service training. Enhanced capacities are also needed among policymakers, curriculum developers, school administrators, etc., as these important stakeholders hold the key to the successful development and mainstreaming of ESD curricula. Finally, the supportive institutions and implementation structure of the education system must be strengthened to deliver more effectively and efficiently on these policy improvements. And key to this is the establishment of safe and effective learning environments where it's possible to promote and develop collaborative learning relationships. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Robert. Dr. Didham has been one of our strong advisory members to operate the Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program, providing us great insights, including the one he just presented now. And we are really encouraged to develop and operate our programs and projects with the insights such as the whole systems thinking, from competition to cooperation, and so on, when we selected and supported our projects on the ground. And we have now Mr. Amako from the Ministry of the Environment, Japan, online. So I would like to invite Mr. Amako again to give us his opening remarks. Mr. Amako, could you unmute yourself?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your introduction. Distinguished participants, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. And I thank you for your participation. My name is Amako Naoki, and I'm honored to speak on behalf of the Japanese Ministry of the Environment in opening the session. I'm sorry, can you hear me? I know that from this device, the voice quality would be quite low. Shall I speak slowly or?
Can hear you.
Is that audible? Okay, thank you. And well, I'd like to welcome all to this session, which is titled Collaborative Learning and Co-Creation of Sustainable Living, Responding to the Crisis and Reshaping the Way Forward. Before introducing today's session, I would like to talk about the background. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has claimed more than 1.2 million lives around the world, and the pandemic is still ongoing. I'd like to offer my deepest condolences to the people affected, and I'm also concerned about those who are economically challenged as a consequence. Also, we are now more aware that our lives depend on essential workers, such as those in the health and welfare sector, the food production sector, the transportation sector, and the waste management sector. They are facing severe risks of infection. It is also important to note that the pandemic highlighted pre-existing inequalities depending on people's gender, race, place of residence, and occupation. Additionally, the modern way of living, based on the ever-increasing use of natural resources, rapid urbanization, and the increasing movement of people, is believed to be a significant factor in the rapid spread of the disease. So, the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted that our lives are supported by vulnerable and unsustainable systems. And now
Maybe you can mute your video and just switch to audio. We've just lost your audio.
Mr. Amako, can you hear me? Okay. Well, unfortunately, we lost Mr. Amako again, so we would like to move on to the we would now like to move on, and hopefully he can come back again. So with the strong support from the Ministry of the Environment Japan, and also support and guidance from great advisory members, including Dr. Dilham, we have operated the Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program for 5 years, and we have launched more than 20 ground-level initiatives, as I mentioned earlier. So here I would like to briefly introduce the two categories of our projects to promote sustainable lifestyles at the ground level. The Sustainable Lifestyles and Education Program is one of the 6 programs under the UN-led One Planet Network, which is co-led by the governments of Japan and Sweden. We have established global and local networks for sustainable living and provided tools and materials for many actors. The program has been supported by the advisory members representing governments, business, and civil society shown here. Above all, we have collaborated with the on-the-ground innovations for sustainable living. And today, I'm going to introduce 2 categories out of them. The first one is the so-called trust fund projects. We selected 25 projects so far through the open call for project proposals, and 17 of them have been completed by 2019. They cover, for instance, the renewable energy project in Chilean highland to enable local citizens to produce food and fuel using geothermal, then mitigating the air pollution and improving the nutritional balance. The other interesting project in Zimbabwe organized 2,000 farmers into groups to develop and manage experimentation fields for conservation agriculture and develop their capacities on nutrition, marketing, and so on. We have recently published the report covering the stories of 70 projects and the critical lessons as shown in the picture. First, sustainable ways of living comprise both responsible living that reduces negative impacts from our lives, such as resource use, waste, and greenhouse gas, as well as reliable livelihoods that enable people to live through the shocks and pressures from the environment, society, and economy. We cannot have one without another. Second, People are most effectively capacitated when they work together at communities, schools, or workplaces in identifying their challenges, planning and carrying out actions, and measuring the impacts. And third, actually none of our partners' project went as planned. They faced a diversity of unforeseen situations, such as political disturbances, natural disasters, and so on. And through these experiences, they could review their actions, gain stronger partnerships, and have clear visions of the life they wish to achieve. So learning and adaptation are the keys to success. We are now working with 8 projects started in late 2019, including the 2 projects we have today, one from Armenia and the other from Colombia. Then let me go on to the next category of initiatives, which is called the Global Search for Sustainable Schools. We collaborate with 9 countries that run a simultaneous national search for schools, which carries out innovative actions in education for sustainable living. 9 countries are Brazil, Suriname, South Africa, Uganda, Namibia, the Philippines, Cambodia, Kyrgyz Republic, and Vietnam. The schools propose their plans and carry out activities for the improvement of school governance, infrastructure development, curriculums, and community actions for sustainable living. So these are the 2 main categories of initiatives on which we collaborate with international partners. However, the ongoing projects and global search for sustainable schools faced a big challenge this year. Since March, many countries introduced lockdown restrictions of meeting and travel that made it quite difficult for project implementers to visit and work with communities for some time. Schools were closed globally. At the peak in late March, 160 million learners, representing 90% of the global learners, were forced to stay out of schools. While collaborative learning and co-creation are the key drivers for sustainable ways of living, this is a big challenge. Therefore, the next part of this session aims to exchange from the 5 of our partners on their experiences of actions and responses to the crisis. We will introduce 5 cases, 2 trust fund projects in Armenia and Colombia, and 3 countries participating in the Sustainable Schools Initiative, South Africa, Brazil, and the Philippines. They have prepared fantastic pieces of movie clips to showcase their activities and responses to the pandemic situation. And Mr. Mike Watt, the director at the Creating Sustainable Value and also another advisor for our program, is going to navigate this session and asks some questions to them. Mike, please unmute yourself. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Atsushi, and it's really great to be part of this exciting event with so much to share, really. As Atsushi's mentioned, we have 5 videos from Armenia, Colombia, South Africa, Brazil, and the Philippines. And as we share these 5 videos, I think that you'll get an excellent insight into some of the key competencies for sustainability that were outlined by Robert in his presentation on education for sustainable development. As we watch these, let's explore these competencies in a range of very different contexts. I think the videos provide an outstanding way of sharing these different projects. And after each video, I'll highlight some of the links to key competencies for education for sustainable development, for sustainable lifestyles and education, and ask some follow-up questions. So let's jump straight into the video from Armenia.
Armenia's dependence on imported fuels creates security of supply risks as well as affordability problems for farmers. The pilot community of Salak mainly relies on natural gas as fuel source, with many poor farmers using wood or manure for heating and cooking. Solar energy use in agriculture is limited to fruit drying. The Encouraging Young Specialists to Power the Agri-Food Value Chains and Building Sustainable Business Models project is designed to promote healthier lifestyles and power agri-food value chain. The initiative is developing and replicating sustainable lifestyles in the academic and economic areas. The project is implemented jointly by the Armenian Women for Health and Healthy Environment NGO and the University of Chile Energy Center. We designed and conducted an academic program in cooperation with 2 local universities. The enrolled university students worked jointly with the Solak pilot community.
Ծրագրի մասնակցությունը հնարավորություն է տվել մեզ հասկանալու համայնքներում առկա խնդիրները, ինչպես նաև կատարելագործելու մեր գիտելիքները և հմտությունները տարբեր բնակավարներում։
The students participated in powering local water pump with solar panels for irrigation of endemic lentils and other climate-resilient crops. We also established important cooperation with local water user association.
Բավականին գործ արվել, համայն գյուղացիների աշխատանքը թեթևացվել է, այդ ջրի հետ կապված խնդիրը բավականին լավ լուծվել է, եւ հետեւաբար պետք է հետեւողական լինենք արդյունքների համար։
Due to COVID-19 situation, the universities and the Solak community were under lockdown for certain periods of time, which impeded field activities. International travel was restricted, which posed difficulties for involvement of project partners. In response to these challenges, online options were put into practice for project components. Our experts conducted a series of online webinars on COVID-19 for Solak community farmers and their children. During the course, students explored the following topics in the context of agri-food value chains in rural communities: climate change, Armenian context, UN Sustainable Development Goals, and gender equality. They learned how to design and manage sustainable projects, including skills such as characterization of energy demand and management of project costs. Our partnership expanded to include the private sector, solar energy companies.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think that what the video from Armenia really provides is an excellent example of systems thinking as it works across the complex relationship between food, energy, and water. I think it also shows the importance of collaborative work, collaboration, including participatory problem solving and innovation. And we're very privileged to have with us today Goha, who has worked on this project. Goha, I was wondering whether I could ask a question about whether you could provide some examples of how the different role players, the university, the Solak community, were able to learn from each other, and what particular skills you think will be particularly important for sustaining and scaling the new practices developed in this innovative project in Solak.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. We are really grateful to IGS and to the government of Japan to make this project possible. And it's been really very exciting. We started quite well. There was no pandemic, and we managed to start the education program. We even had an opportunity to have sessions with participation of the community. Our students went to the community and talked to them. And then in March, everything stopped. And we had to face difficulties of organizing the learning further. Moreover, it was not just the classes that we had to rethink how to organize, but also how to communicate with the community, how to engage with them. Because it's really very difficult to motivate the farmer. They need to see the result, the benefits of what is being proposed to them. So what are the lessons and the good examples, the skills that we think are important for scaling up. This is the partnership and the trust and the sense of ownership that we managed to build in. Because the farmers, well, they're very suspicious. They are very realistic. They do not like very much innovation. They have to check, test for themselves, see the benefit, and then they will trust. And here come the young people who are trying to teach them. Teach what? What do you know about our lives? You come from the city. Come on, do you know all difficulties and all that? But we managed to overcome this obstacle by involving engineering students who are coming from these communities, from Slovak community and other rural communities. And this also will encourage the student to bring the knowledge that they have in the university to their real life and to see how it can be adapted. And also to look the program that we built, it was to help them look through the prism of sustainable development goals, how you adapt them, how you do the gender aspects, because one of the, for instance, big difficulties is to engage the women in specialties such as engineering, for instance. Do you know many women who are engineers in solar engineering, for instance? And we managed to bring in young engineers from universities of Armenia. And we are really very grateful to University of Chile that helped us rethink our method of teaching. We were quite traditional. There was a lot of Soviet style of teaching. And now we brought a new insight, and it really was quite revolutionary. Unfortunately, we could have reached much better results, but for the pandemic. But indeed, we have very good potential to develop, and they are really very enthusiastic about that. You can judge also by the film. We ask them just to bring in their what they think about it, and they just send their videos. We could not reach them, but they just sent it. It was just great. Yeah. And that's the result of our trust that we built. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, so many transformative activities taking place in a very short video, and I'm sure so much more learned through the project. So thank you so much for sharing it. We're going to move on now to the video from Colombia.
The UTA Colombian Foundation leads a project to record the traditional practices of mountain rice and wheat cultivation in collaboration with 21 peasant families in Boyacá and Santander, Colombia. We aim to unleash creativity and added value to the byproducts of family farming, achieving the recovery route for the cultivation of wheat and mountain rice in agroecological systems. To this end, we offered baskets of technologies per family, with a variety of 16 different appropriate technologies raised and learned during the process. Families create community machinery and equipment funds. The basket of technologies help us and villagers to recover the crops and seeds of wheat and mountain rice, as well as the tradition and knowledge of artisan cuisine. Crafts have also been a protagonist in our project, sharing experiences from Colombia and other even Asian countries. The community leaders, youth and elderly, and professionals from the UTA Foundation collaborated on the project and made progress through learning by doing. By February 2020, we have brought together a group of people to establish the collaborative relationship, which is the foundation of the project. Then, the pandemic hit the country in March 2020. We immediately started responding to the crisis, firstly by identifying the reliable means of communication. It was revealed that mostly younger villagers had smartphones. A group of WhatsApp was set up, where alternative actions were discussed. The project team and the villagers created virtual community spaces, where all the families follow the tradition to meet weekly at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday and share a cup of coffee. Participants listened to audios of the characters created by the coordinators to facilitate the learning of the weekly topic. They also shared photos, writing, music, and short videos on the WhatsApp to share experiences and provide comments to each other. Experts were also invited to the creative spaces to consolidate the knowledge to achieve a more sustainable lifestyle. This generates permanent communication and unites the family and the community for the same purpose, sustainability in the field. Participants and the project team feel more united than ever. We visited the corner of each farm and met the whole family, the children and young people, the parents and the grandparents. Each activity was edited and taken to a podcast that was returned to the family, so this allowed people to listen to the program in their time. In short, the basket of technology approach worked very well to enable face-to-face collaboration and mutual learning among families. The virtual communication also turned out very effective in maintaining and facilitating communication and encouraging the reflection to their achievements even when they cannot collaborate physically.
Right, and another super video that I think really shows the importance of integrated problem solving, including the ability to apply different problem solving frameworks to complex sustainability problems and develop viable and I think very inclusive solutions. So we're joined today by Lillian, who's worked on this project over an extended period of time. I wonder whether you can pop on your camera and microphone and maybe just give us an example of how the hybrid of face-to-face and virtual collaboration helped to bring together technical experts with the social and indigenous systems of knowledge that the farmers brought into the project. And what lessons from this interaction will you take forward into your future work?
Thank you, Mike, for your question. We think it was full of examples. No, we had the methodology with 4 aspects: the local promoters, the sustainable lifestyle schools, workshops, and the basket of technologies, as you saw. No, and then the virtuality was important, but not after the pandemic. We got to know that it was a key. No, it was a key in the project. So we challenge ourselves to be creative and to share the knowledge in a different way, in a fun way, and then we got the people involved. And in all the subjects we work in the project, we had the chance to share with people, but then also to include more people from other countries and other places, other departments in our country. Good examples with the interaction of the hybrid approach is like the traditional practices for soil preparation, and then how could we get the interaction with the farmer organization in France and in Mexico, showing us the light tools for animal traction, for example. So it is a clear interaction and the generation of another opportunity for future projects. The rice and the wheat treasure. So also we got the interaction with the local people and experts from outside to build the machine and to have it tested by farmers, and then the feedback to experts. The solar energy, at the beginning we set up in face-to-face activities the systems, and later through video tutorials we could set up some other systems. That was the possibility to give the knowledge to people. That is a good example in different levels, because they were not the knowledge, the local knowledge was not created, but then the project created it as for example, with biodigesters and gasification, new technologies. So practical activities are very important, but also virtual activities reinforce the knowledge. So we learn a lot, and we will continue. Definitely, we learn with these lessons we learn. We will continue to use and strengthen in all our projects, working together with local promoters, sustainable lifestyle schools, practical workshops, and the basket of technologies. We highlight this because it's a way that allows us to respond to the needs of each family that is very important. And it's very important that we are part of a network. So it also allows us to share this knowledge and these lessons learned to more people, no? When we have this virtual.
Lillian, thank you so much for the kind of sharing and the enthusiasm and an amazing project. So
thank you, Mike.
Hugely appreciate it. Thank you. And we're going to move now on to South Africa.
The Global Search for Sustainable Schools project in South Africa is implemented by the African Conservation Trust. We support 25 schools that are committed to better environmental learning and management with practical in-classroom lessons around different sustainability issues.
Can stop climate change by protecting animals and nature. In nature, like trees, they trap carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is bad to our climate. We can stop burning coal in factories and we can eat less meat.
Some of the action projects we have supported schools with include developing permaculture gardens, learning about the value of ecosystems and the services they give us, and protecting and looking after our rivers using simple citizen science tools, rehabilitating natural areas, and encouraging biodiversity back into our school grounds. Raising our voices is also important, as is looking at waste management and how we can reduce our consumption. COVID pandemic raised a number of issues, especially those linked with water, as many schools do not have access to clean water. We offered them alternatives for keeping hands clean and set up tippy taps, a cost-effective and water-saving way to keep hands clean. Besides, water could never be more important as we experience more drought due to climate change. Learners were tasked with working out how much water is saved using a tippy tap versus washing hands under a running tap, and were astounded to find out that it could save 40 times more water.
The tippy taps that was installed by GSS also, it helped us also because now we know that not only is COVID-19, we also didn't have to wash hands, but now we have to look after the saving of water. That's very important. So the GSS had been installed the tippy taps that help us just wash hands without wasting a lot of water.
Teachers requested workshops on the COVID-19 virus. Our role was to help them sift the facts from the fiction and put the impact of the virus in perspective when one compares it with other global lifestyle diseases like diabetes and the more sinister impacts of the climate crisis. Importantly, we wanted teachers to see the connections between our relationship with the environment and how our actions are contributing to the many global health epidemics we see today. We also offered a workshop on healthy eating in the planet. This provided an opportunity to support SDG 12 in explaining how our food choices have everything to do with the climate crisis. Teachers were really inspired to learn that a plant-based diet is better for our health and immune systems, and also for the planet too. The pandemic also had other impacts. Over 9 million children in South Africa depend on daily school meals. With lockdown, this ceased, and this health issue soon became a hunger issue. In response, the GSS project has supported some of our schools in getting their food gardens prepared and planted. We are also delighted that 6 of our 7 top schools have completed some really interesting upscale projects during this time, which include fuel-efficient wood-burning stoves, vegetable tunnels for reliable vegetable production, a solar geyser has been installed, a free-range egg supply project has been initiated, and an indigenous biodiversity garden as well as a recycling centre have been set up.
The problem is that nobody taught us. We're not aware that the global warming will be upon us, and it's really upon us, and it's hitting us so hard. We hope that when they understand it, then they take it back to their homes, and then the whole community will understand and find solutions. Thank you, GSS project leaders, for coming over and doing some practical stuff with us. Forward with saving water, forward with eliminating climate crisis, forward.
another great example, I think, of the kind of work creating both self-awareness and critical thinking amongst all of the students, the teachers, everybody involved. Bridget joins us today, and Bridget's obviously been very involved in working on this. I've got a tricky question for Bridget, coming from probably the most unequal country in the world. I was wondering, what are the big challenge? How do you start to address issues of unequal access to basic rights like water and food as you work towards more sustainable living?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's a really good question and a tough question. And certainly this pandemic highlighted limited access of water and food more than ever in the situation of schools in particular. But I think the point here is that each school that we work with has their own set of challenges, and that even if some of these schools have municipal supplied water, piped water, adequate sanitation, prudent water use and food security is kind of a prevailing theme across most of these schools. And these issues are really deep-rooted and require systematic changes, which we can't really implement. But what we do try to do is address infrastructural and educational gaps we see on a needs basis. So we look at each school. So in the case of water scarcity, and as I said, many of these schools that we work with don't have piped water. Obviously, these children know better than anybody how to save water. And so we assist them with understanding why there is this water deficit and teach them new skills around saving water at home and using tippy taps, for example, and why grey water is a good thing to use. But and why these, and at the same time to kind of show them that many of them are doing these kind of water saving things already. So they are already the water saving heroes. And when the time comes, which is coming, when taps already run dry in cities and towns where people are using a lot more, those children in those water scarce areas, even though it's not fair, they are ready for this. They know how to live on 5 liters of water per day, whereas someone in the city is going to be actually left high and dry. It doesn't mean that it's right, but really to show that they actually have come a long way. And likewise with food, to try and bring that.
Jump in over there, but yes, I think a fantastic example, and just an insight into how this kind of self-awareness, this ability to understand where you are in relation to big systems is so important in this work. So thank you for sharing it. I wish we had more time, but we don't. We're going to move on to Brazil. Thanks, Brett.
The global search for sustainable schools in Brazil aimed at filling the shortage of incentives for education for sustainable lifestyles in national formal education system. The initiative, Desafio Escola Sustentável in Portuguese, has selected the best sustainability action plans from basic education schools and has given them a grant to support the implementation costs of these plans, turning these schools into role models to be showcased and inspire other local schools in the same direction. The 5 selected schools have submitted very diverse sustainability action plans with pedagogical activities and structural improvements focused on issues such as waste management, sustainable food, renewable energy, vegetable gardens, water use systems, and so on. All the innovations and knowledge exchanges were integrated and debated with students and school communities to be put into practice through infrastructure renovations. But after just 1 month of implementation of the selected GSS action plans, the sanitary restrictions due to COVID-19 suspended all in-person activities at school.
O nosso principal desafio na implementação do projeto foi justamente o período de pandemia, uma vez que a maior parte do nosso projeto era baseado em atividades teórico-práticas com os alunos e comunidade escolar, e que foram impedidas de serem aplicadas porque desde 17 de março a escola municipal não recebe alunos.
After a few weeks of lockdown, most of formal education institutions have started with a similar activity virtually. Most of the pedagogical actions planned to be implemented by GSS selected schools had to be adapted. Online tools are used to foster the engagement of teachers and students despite of limited access to internet. Google Classroom and Zoom were likely used by schools, but WhatsApp was more effective in limited internet reach.
Nós começamos no início de agosto um curso de formação, assim, voltado mais para essas temáticas do projeto, consumo consciente, gestão de resíduos, porque nós acreditamos muito nessa mobilização através dos nossos alunos, né? Então, são eles que convencem os pares também sobre a importância de se tratar dessas temáticas.
On the other hand, the proposed infrastructure improvements had no important adaptations to the pandemic. Most of the schools were able to keep this kind of innovations and successfully implement their solar panels, water collection, urban use systems, and waste collection sites, among others. However, the results of this new technologies, both in terms of new pedagogical activities and the reduction of the school ecological footprint, will only be fully noticeable in 2021, and hopefully will resume their regular activities. The preliminary estimates, nevertheless, are very promising.
Foi muito legal. Mesmo nesse momento de pandemia, a galera se uniu para fazer algo pela nossa escola. E agora nós conseguimos perceber muito mais esse lugar como esse.
Denise, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here with us and to see the work that you've been up to. I was wondering whether you can give us a little bit more detail on how the students were involved in the decision-making process and how you might expand some of the impacts of the innovative practices that we saw in the video.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really glad to be here with all of you. So students as protagonists of their own learning process was a key element of these projects. And it was one of the main criteria used to select the schools. So all the schools had to submit their information, and in the submission process, and they told us a little bit about the decision making and the creation of these action plans. So most of them formed committees that were responsible for the creation of the projects and the implementation of the projects afterwards. So the students were involved in these committees, and in most cases, also the school community and fathers and all the other stakeholders involved in the educational process were also involved in these committees. So this was key, it was strategic and very important for the selection of the process that would participate and then receive the grants. In terms of how to upscale it, I think there are several actions that could be implemented that could help in terms of dissemination of these experiences. I think that one of the most important, at least for the Brazilian situations, is to keep a communication channel open with public, with educational authorities. So try to develop a connection with these educational authorities in order to try to make this kind of experiences and successful cases, try to make this to stimulate and to foster the implementation of public policies in this area. So this is what I see the most effective strategy in terms of making initiatives like this to get really disseminated to the country.
Denise, thank you very, very much for those insights and for some great work there as well. Okay, we're going to move on to the last of the videos from the Philippines.
GSSS Philippines, in its effort to advance the implementation of the Sustainable Lifestyle and Education Program of the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production patterns, in the Philippines is assisting in the scaling of education for sustainable development work within the Asia Pacific and contribute to the establishment of an education component to the SLE program. Grants provided to schools by GSSS through IGES are to support the schools in their implementation plans to enhance school greening projects, beautifying schools with vegetable gardens. The gardens serve as actual learning areas for science, particularly on the nutritional value of vegetables. Harvests are used in cooking class. Excess harvests are brought home for consumption. Vegetables from school gardens have significantly augmented the feeding program of the school. Harvested vegetables nourish the school pupils. But due to COVID-19 pandemic, students were prevented to go to school, to attend class, to tend the gardens, to cook, to be fed.
Let me give you a glimpse of our 4Gs, the Glow, Grow, Go Green project and its extension, the GST project. Due to the repercussion of the COVID-19 pandemic, the school seeks a more intensive vegetable growing program in every learner's home. This is a way to bond with the members of the family while staying at home, and what they could harvest for these gardens could sustain their food during the pandemic. Moreover, if there is a surplus of vegetables, it can provide additional income to the family. The technology and livelihood education, as well as the music, arts, PE, and health teachers, as well as their section advisors, monitor the growth of the vegetables to sustain the project.
Despite COVID-19, the schools gave their best foot forward. Collaboration with community stakeholders prevailed. Home gardens were established and enhanced. Unoccupied lots are cultivated. Empty containers are filled. Parents and students together tend to the home gardens. Through social media, teachers and parents show off how their gardens flourish.
Kung mag-garden kayo tungod, no? Ang pinaka-basic na yung panginahanglanon sa tao is pagkaon. Labo sa atong panahon karon, nag-isod, wala kayo kapangitan o panginabuhian. Importante gyud nga naatay pagkaon sa ato ang panimalay. So, morning nagtanong ko na dili lang siya pang market, paligya dito katod naging hangad pud akong pamilya sa pagkaon, labi na sa mga gulay yung karon no kay para po bisan pag na COVID, malayo pud ang ato ang mga members sa pamilya sa sakit.
Since we are experiencing pandemic nowadays, we do have limited resources, and our garden is our only primary source of medicine, healthy food for us, and also to improve our eating habits. Lastly, it gives positive impact towards environment.
I support Gulayan sa Tahanan Project.
Gulayan sa Tahanan Project.
Gulayan sa Tahanan Project. Gulayan sa Tahanan Project. Gulayan sa Tahanan Project.
The response of the schools was to collaborate with stakeholders. They made more greening to flourish in schools and in homes, then to nourish the children, the family. No one is left behind.
So Coral, thank you for joining us from the Philippines. You must be very proud of that piece of work. One little question that I have is, in the video it's mentioned that the gardens are used for learning areas such as science, so part of the formal curriculum. And I was wondering whether you were able to keep the curriculum focused during the COVID pandemic, and if so, how you did this through distance learning.
Mike, thank you for the question. The students here in the Philippines do self-learning modules. Because of the restriction, the parents take the modules from the school on Mondays and they bring it back to the school on Fridays. In between those days, the students do their homework. So the nutritional value of the vegetables, which are included in the home vegetable gardening, is integrated in the subject technology and livelihood education. Food pyramid and healthy diet plans are integrated into the lessons of the subject health, and the nutritional values of vegetables are included in the science subject. I was also told that even mathematics, they include also vegetable gardening. The integration of the home gardens in the learning process is being done by the teachers of TLE, science, and their class advisors. The exchange of modules between parents and teachers facilitate the communication, and in turn, the parents are able to guide their children on school requirements and even the expectations, including the integration of learning in home vegetable gardens. Since home gardening is required in the learning process, parents help their students, their children, and they have their own gardens. So learning is thus enhanced and realized. So despite COVID-19, the schools were able to keep the curriculum focus. Thank you.
So Cora, thank you, and thank you to everybody who was involved in all of those projects and putting the videos together. It was an amazing whirlwind tour of ESD under COVID and in response to some of the big issues that we face. I'm going to hand it back over to the Secretariat. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you very much for Socorro and Denise and Bridget, Gohar and Lillian for providing us great pieces of video. Actually, I was supposed to visit all of the project sites this year, but I'm now very happy to watch these the clips and reports from the ground. And now we're going to the final part of our session, which is the panel discussion among the two advisors, Mike and Robert, as well as their 5 project representatives, Lillian, Gohar, Denise, Bridget, and Socorro, and Bridget. So, my colleague, Mr. Dwayne Appleby, who is the main coordinator for the Global Search for Sustainable Schools initiative, will moderate the panel discussion. Dwayne, can you unmute yourself?
Wonderful. Thank you, Atsushi. And thank you, Mike, for helming that whirlwind. It was wonderful. So as we start into this section, we've got a couple of questions for each of the presenters. We've arranged these in advance. First, I would like to start with Gohar. And I'd like to ask you, what is the discovery that you made during your project on the way to shaping your efforts for sustainable living? What was something that really jumped out from your experience with the project?
Thank you very much for this question, which helped us think and analyze what we have done. For the project, it was very important to strengthen the real-life experiences and to have new partnerships. In fact, when we started the project, we wanted to have it only with one university. That was the Polytechnic University, where they had the energy people, and the Chilean University also were the energy people. But when we started to talk to the community, particularly with the Women's Resource Center, the women farmers, who are of great help to mobilize the innovative ideas, we realized that the engineers have to be supported by professional advice from agrarians. Therefore, we involved also the Agrarian University. But as we were trying to bring new teaching pedagogic skills to our professors in both universities, and we had, of course, the Chilean University, but we wanted to have something also in the country. And then we contacted the American University of Armenia, and they helped us organize the student groups so that they come up with their own projects, specific projects that would be realized. And then there is another very interesting thing that came out of the project when they were doing their research. We understood that it's very important that they have the opportunity to visit the cooperatives, to visit to cooperate with the industry sector, to see the community serving structures, such as, for instance, the Water Use Association. And to be able, this also gives them opportunity for future employment. That was also very, very important. Connected to that was the opportunity also to have a real life project. They could see something that generated out of what they were thinking. They did the project presentations, and then they come to community and they start working with, engineers, already graduates, who have the experience, and they're learning together. And they're learning from the community, because the community has very interesting insights of what they want, really, the engineers to bring to them. And one last thing that I want to share that was really very important in this process when we had to face the pandemic and the lockdown. We tried to gather the options, how to mobilize the students, how to not to lose all these educational opportunities. And there were many options for the online platforms. We'll use the lot, there was good Skype, etc. But the students came with very good idea of organizing a closed Facebook group, closed only for them, which they called Green Ranges of Armenia. And we used the same, away from the project, name of the project, and we used the same to create a platform on our website, so that they come, see all the presentations, share their ideas, and this Facebook is still working, it's growing, it's beyond our control already. That was real wonderful.
That's
so
wonderful.
Briefly,
Thank you, Gohar. Thank you. Bridget, in South Africa, I'd like to pose the same question to you quickly. Is there a key discovery that you made along your way that's really shaping your efforts towards sustainable living in South Africa?
Bridget, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry. In the work we do with schools, I think probably one of the most important things is to make sure your projects are contextual and relevant, okay? So, and that's where where you can really encourage sustainable learning at all levels. The example of the fuel efficient stove. Now that school was struggling to cook for 1,200 learners on a daily basis on open fires. And the hazards that those women experience, the community women, there are about 6 of them that cook, is one thing. And then of course the amount of wood that they're using is another thing, resulting in more carbon emissions. So with this fuel efficient stove, we were able to draw a whole lesson and learning program around this with the ladies in the kitchen, but also the children in the classroom, about climate change, greenhouse effect, and all of these kinds of topics. And now they could really see a difference from literally one day to the next. The cooks were ecstatic, and on top of that, they got 2 cooks got a lucky draw, and they got their own household version of that stove. We gave them their own household version. And then every time we've been to that school, we've heard lots of stories about, other people want to buy these. They want to also, they're thinking about hiring these out for community functions. And of course, they're now using less wood. The learners that we've worked with, they've really understand this whole, the science of climate change. I mean, that's just one thing. And they're able to provide food more quickly, so that the cooks actually save time and they don't have to bend over as much either. So from an ergonomic point of view, they're better off and they're not inhaling as much smoke, and the school's saving money. So yeah, so I think that the whole sort of contextual and relevant, that's really where the best learning happens.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bridget. And I'll just note, as well as we move on to the next questions, that we are up against the clock. So if we can make sure to be concise in our answers, we might be able to squeeze in a couple of questions from the audience at the end. So thank you again, Bridget. So next, we're going to jump to Socorro in the Philippines. I'd like to ask you, what is one thing that we can do to support and enhance the potential of collaborative learning?
Yes, Join. I think there's really a need for financial and technical support, because in the Asian countries, remember, day one in our workshop, we were talking about education for sustainable development. And when the way I look at it, we are very far from where we should be. So support is really needed.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think that is a common message that we've been hearing. So thank you for raising that. Now I'd like to ask the same question from Lillian in Colombia. What's one thing that we could do to support and enhance the potential of collaborative learning?
Yeah, yes. I think it's very important to understand that social base comes first. No, is when we have a strong social base, it's possible to generate changes, and changes are not generated by technology alone. So it's important that the funders, the financial supporters understand that, and that the people there, yeah, because I say there because we are here and and sometimes you are there, but I think this session is a very good example of that, of people understanding the base and the local situation and giving support in a key aspects. It's very important to have an integral view. That is important too, because not all the funders have this integral view and allow us to do projects and to innovate and even to respond to challenges like was in this COVID situation, because sometimes the projects are written and one cannot move, and the projects in the communities are or like live organism. Yeah, so it's something that we have to adjust and to learn, because we are learning from each other. So it's important to support projects that generate and strengthen the local economies, and to understand also that the consumers, no, the general population has a key to play in these projects, because if we produce wheat and rice in an agroecological system where we produce more things too, so it's important that these products goes to the aware consumers, that people that are in the cities, but we have to connect cities and countryside. That was a very good learning in our project, no? Support renewable energy processes for connectivity, because we talk about virtual experience, but it was difficult. It was internet is not available, so it's very important to understand that we can join this renewable energy and connectivity in the countryside, so we can have more impact. It's also important to understand that we can focus financial resources in a better way when we have this virtual hybrid with face-to-face, and then we can be more efficient in the use of time and the financial resources, and maybe more resources can be expended in the communities, but with a focus in funds, in revolving funds, so we don't give things. Also, it's important to understand, and that we can have in some point an impact in policy making, yeah, because we have to go also up, and then supporters, financial supporters can help to do that, to impact more and to build the policies from the community base, no? Because sometimes this is policies are written, but some people out there, but we need to develop this policy from the community base.
Excellent. Thank you, Lillian. I think that was really well said. And I think that we see that in the work that you've been doing. So I'd like to now jump to our third question. And Denise in Brazil, I'm wondering if you could tell us what is still needed in order to share more experiences and lessons from on-the-ground innovation, such as we've heard today.
Yeah, actually, despite of all the intense use of social media and ICTs, I think the key issue here is it's difficult to communicate. So, and especially to communicate in an effective and friendly and attractive way. So, if we can work on capacitating people to do that, or to foster people to do that, I think this would be a very important contribution. It's really hard for the schools and for on-the-ground institutions to do this kind of communication, innovative and friendly and attractive. So this is very strategic for the dissemination of projects and initiatives like that. And I think also talking specifically about schools, I think the students have a very important role to play in this area. They are very used to these new tools and technologies, so they can help and they can be a trigger, a very important trigger for this communication with friendly and attractive ways. So I think this would be very important.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that what you're highlighting here about youth, we've heard throughout all of the projects, the power of engaging youth, whether it be through technology or in helping to shepherd along the older generation who needs to see a demonstration of what's possible. Thank you, Denise. Just looking at the time, I think that we might not do questions from the Slido. I think we will need to jump back to the Secretariat and at Sushi now to wrap up the session. I just want to thank everybody very much for your answers and the videos you provided and the excellent discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dwayne, and thank you very much, Denise, Bridget, Socorro, and Lillian, and Gohar for the wonderful discussion. So actually, I was really happy to see their movie clips shared with you 2 days ago, and I'm really encouraged and inspired to listen to your discussion. So yeah, these are actually while we're something we learned from all of the projects while we supported and collaborated with these on the ground initiatives, because all of these projects are real life projects, as Kohal mentioned. So these are not just theoretical ones. So and for this reason, all of the projects are contextual and so relevant to the locally specific situation. But so for this reason, as Lillian said, all projects need their strong social base. These are not just a technical or engineering project, but we still need to work on harder to build the social basis and connections. And as Denise said, that for this capacitating the communication, fostering communication among different stakeholders will be the key. So these are something we learned. So having said that, we are coming closer to the final minute of the session. I really appreciate all of the speakers, including Robert and Mike, to set the ground of the discussion and carried out the excellent moderation of the session, and all of the 5 project representatives. And here I have a word from Mr. Amako from the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. He was unable to connect again, unfortunately, but he said he is sorry for the technical problem, but he was encouraged to see how the projects are coping with the current challenging situation and moving forward to make our lives more sustainable and resilient. So he also said, let us redesign our future with your insights. That's a wonderful word for closing this session. And I hope you have a good rest of the day, irrespective of which of the corner of the world you are. So thank you very much.